Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children. That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
Welcome to our unrehearsed, spontaneous, and informal program. As always, no teleprompters, no cue cards, no idiot boards, no reruns. Just plain ad-lib conversation in which we try and tell it like it really is.
Good evening, North America. This is Vinny from VNA, and this is our focus scope. This is our second part of this series, fuck Trudeau. Okay, we're going to exercise our right of free speech here. We're going to just tell it is, like it is, how it is. No idiot boards, no Secret Service shit in my ears. Just go right on and tell you the straight truth, how it is, just like our mentor Lou would have done. Okay, because you have to exercise your right of free speech. We're up against the left. This thing's going to explain what the left is. It's the real enemy. Everybody goes Trudeau, 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 Biden, Freeland, etc., Mendocino. They point at the politicians who are just the puppets, the puppet masters who really run this stuff. And in here we're going to learn from Dennis Prager, from Steven Crowder, who the real enemy is, from Donald Trump. He's even in here. Okay, we got excerpts, everybody, and through these excerpts we're going to teach you tonight. Okay, we're going to start out with some funny memes to get everybody in the joyful mood to watch this thing. It's Christmas, so this is one of the reasons we're giving you this gift at this time of year. Okay, we don't have any people sitting in the studio telling me what to do. Those are the guest chairs right there. We don't have anybody there. All it is me here in the studio. I can go to different formats. I can go here and go on this camera or another camera if I wanted to, but I'm just going to talk to you straight up just like we would have done. I'm going to tell you the truth tonight. So without any further ado, let's get into Dennis Prager. He's going to explain the difference what capitalism and socialism is. When you do capitalism, that's just substitute the word conservative there. When you do socialism, just capitalize liberalism, Marxism, communism, to switch it there. So without any further ado, let's start out with Dennis. Okay, he's going to explain this to you. Then we're going to get into Donald Trump and Steven Crowder. This is going to be a very enjoyable and entertaining cast too. Crowder at the end of it, he's funnier than hell. You guys are going to love it. Canadians got such a good sense of humor. Americans do too, even though sometimes they don't get Canadian humor. But you guys, all you Trudeau haters out there, he's a bad man, and you know that he's a bad man. He's a F up. He's a fuck up. Okay, I'm just going to say it straight out. But we're going to learn who the real enemy is that tells him what to do, and then he can't even do that right, Anyway, so let's get on with it and watch Dennis Prager. Okay, I'll be back in and narrate a little bit during this, but Vinny out for now and watch Dennis. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Hope you enjoyed the second part of the series. Okay, before we get into Dennis, okay, we gotta, we're gonna play a little thing by Polieivre. So the reason we're playing this thing by Polieivre first before Prager is to show exactly the point we're talking about. Pierre Polieivre, talks about Trudeau. Bernier talks about Trudeau. Now, Bernier talks about the left being the enemy a little bit more than Trudeau does, than Polieivre does. But here in Canada, it's sure if you're a political candidate, you got to attack your enemy and everything. But the enemy is not, it is Trudeau, but it isn't Trudeau. He's not the one who's actually calling the shots. And like I said earlier, he can't even do what his puppet masters want him to do right. He's a total fuck up, this guy. So let's get on with this. We're going to listen to Polieivre and notice how, usually he attacks Trudeau, which he's right for doing that. But Trudeau, Polieivre, and a lot of them even though Andrew's a little bit better at it, Andrew understands the left. That's probably why Pierre's got him sitting next to him. Andrew's a very intelligent man. A lot of people didn't give him credit. And Andrew's mistake was running away from rebel cameras. He's not doing that anymore. He talks to me. He'll talk to people more, and whatnot. He knows how to win. Anyways, and he knows the real enemy is the left, and I think Pierre knows this at heart too, but he's just not getting into that yet. I hope when things happen, he's going to start amending things like getting our officials elected, our senators and everything. But without any further ado, let's get into Pierre, listen to what he's saying, and, write him letters and say the real enemy is the left. Let's get rid of all these Soros and Wise and everything funds. You put a limit on what they can donate to a party, if it's contains, anti-Canadian Marxist views. They can draft a law to make that work. They can draft a law to get our senators and everything elected instead of appointed, or at least a portion of the senators, elected, or double up the number of senators. have one senator elected by the people and another one appointed. There's a way to come with the compromise. Anyways, we're going to get onto this, and notice, that we got to get all these politicians seeing who the real enemy is. Sure, when you're running, for a thing, you attack your enemies and show everything they do wrong, but you got to look at the roots of it. Mention to these friggin' politicians, well, who's telling you to say this stuff? What's your agenda there, buddy? Anyways, let's get on. Let's listen to Pierre, and then we're going to go into Dennis. Remember when you're listening to Dennis? Remember when you're listening to Dennis? I'm talking so fast. Remember when you're listening to Dennis Prager that when he says capitalism, he means conservatism. When he says liberal, he means our socialism means liberal, communist and all that. He's kind of going to explain that, and then he gets into more of it. Then we jump right into Donald Trump, and then one of the best parts of this whole video is Stephen Crowder. He shows how Detroit was destroyed, by leftists and everything. And it's happening. It's going to happen in Canada, too. Everybody in Detroit had their arms out for all this free stuff. It was the poster boy of liberal policies, and this is what happened in Detroit, and it's going to happen here, too. Maybe not in government cities like Ottawa, but like in Toronto and stuff, it's going towards there. Montreal, out east, and Newfoundland is already feeling it, out east, they're destroying the industries and everything. The Chinese are buying them up, and just like happened in Detroit pretty much, and the unions are screwing stuff up. Crowder's going to tell you exactly what the problems are with the left. He's going to show you by example what Dennis is talking about. Anyway, so without any further ado, let's get into this. Now here's Pierre, and then you're going to get into
Okay, well, I was going to take the follow-up, so sorry. Lieberthium, Canadian Press, sir. Your predecessor, Aaron O'Toole, has written a blog basically saying he would like to see fewer F. Trudeau flags. He says they're a symptom of a larger problem in which rage is being normalized, which in turn is hurting our democracy. I'd like your thoughts on those flags and Mr. O'Toole's concerns that, again, rage is being normalized and hurting democracy.
Well, I don't like the flags, and I don't like rage, but I think we have to ask ourselves, why are people so angry? Like, why are people so angry? And the answer is that they're hurting. It's easy for the political establishment to say, stop all your complaining. But when you're one of the 1.5 million people that went to a food bank in the month of March, it's not so easy. If you're one of the people that went to the Mississauga food bank and asked for help with medical assistance in dying, not because you're sick, but because you can't afford to live, it's not so easy. If you're one of the 38-year-olds living in your parents' basement because it now takes more of a monthly paycheck to own a house than at any time in recorded history, it's not so easy to be happy with the way things are going. If you're one of the people who was overprescribed opioids and is now addicted to drugs as a result, it's not so easy to be happy with the way things are going. I have never seen so much hurt and so much pain and suffering in our population in my nearly 2 decades in politics. So yes, of course, we should tell people to be more civil and to reject offensive signs, flags, and language. But we should also ask ourselves, why are people hurting so badly? And we as leaders, the other day Justin Trudeau was at a big party with 2,000 wealthy liberal lobbyists in the nation's capital, saying that we should stop all the complaining. Well, everybody in that room has nothing to complain about. They're doing very well. It's been an all-you-can-eat buffet for the lobbyists and the insiders in Ottawa. But for the average person who's struggling to make their mortgage payments that have gone up by $800 or $900 a month, that they're living in a different world. So sure, let's tell people to be more civil, but let's, as political leaders, Let's actually try to solve the problems that have upset and angered and hurt people so badly. It is our job to turn that hurt into hope, to transform it into something better. You know, my parents taught me that in Canada it didn't matter where I came from, but where I was going. It didn't matter who I knew, but what I could do. That's the country I want my kids to inherit. So let's make this a place where people feel like their hard work pays off, where they're respected, where their leaders don't talk down to them and point fingers at them, but rather lift them up. Where we have a prime minister that actually brings people together and gives them the hope that tomorrow can be better than today. I think that is the real problem that we need to solve, and it's the one I will solve as prime minister. Thank you.
Now, the reason I played that little thing from Pierre Polieivre, a lot of these politicians, even the conservative ones, don't, you know, sure, they got to attack their opposition like Trudeau and everything, but it's always Trudeau, 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 or Mendocino, or Mendocino, or Mendocino. They're hardly ever just attack the left, you know. You know, Polieivre, he's better than most, you know, Bernier's good too, and apparently they're going to work together, you know. They decided to put away the hatchet and work together, which is good for the country. But I'm not going to get too much into this. But, you know, we got to tell these politicians, one, we need to get rid of these, you know, leftist teachers in our educational system, because through the decades that's been happening. And two, we got to have elected officials. You know, if Polieivre really wants to do something, Bernier, they need to amend the Constitution to make, you know, our judges and our senators elected, you know, even the police chiefs elected, because this is ridiculous. You know, and they need to start attacking the left, not just Trudeau, Mendocino, Freeland. You know, Andrew Scheer, he's got the brains to do that. I've talked to Andrew before, and he's got the brains to do that. That's why Pierre's got him beside him. Not that he's smarter than Pierre or anything, but the two brains working together, the three Bernier with them, and the other, you know, like Rachel, like Danko, and all the rest of them up there, all the other conservatives. You got some awesome ones, but they got to start attacking the left instead of individual candidates, and they got to start restructuring and undo the damage that was done. Now, Dennis can explain that to you, so let's get on to Dennis. I don't want to take too long today like I did yesterday with the last one of these. This is series 2 in our Fuck Trudeau thing, and there I said I'm exercising my free speech again tonight, and I'm bringing it to you just like I should bring it to you. That's what people appreciate about me. I'm for real. Anyways, here we go. Andy, if you're out there, hope you enjoy this. Thank you very much.
That capitalism, with its free market and profit motive, is based on selfishness and produces selfishness, while socialism is based on selflessness and produces selflessness. Well, the opposite is true. Whatever its intentions, socialism produces far more selfish individuals and a far more selfish society than a free market economy does. And once this widespread selfishness catches on, it is almost impossible to undo it. Here's an illustration. In 2010, the United States President, Barack Obama, addressed a large audience of college students. At one point in his speech, he announced that young people will now be able to remain on their parents' health insurance plan until age 26. I don't ever recall hearing a louder, more thunderous, or more sustained applause than I did then. Had the president announced that a cure for cancer had been discovered, it is highly doubtful that the applause would have been as loud or as long. But what were they so happy about? To be told that you can now remain dependent on your parents until age 26 should strike a young person as demeaning, not liberating. Throughout American history, and for that matter, all of Western history, the great goal of young people was to become a mature adult, beginning with being independent of mom and dad. Socialism and the welfare state destroy this aspiration. In various European countries, and now increasingly in the US, it is becoming common for young people to live with their parents well into their 30s and not infrequently beyond. And why not? In the welfare state, taking care of yourself is no longer a virtue. Why? Because the government will take care of you. Therefore, socialism enables, and as a result produces, people whose preoccupations become more and more self-centered. How many benefits will I receive from the government? Will the government pay for my education? Will the government pay for my health care? What is the youngest age at which I can retire? How much paid vacation time can I get? How many days can I call in sick and still get paid? How many weeks of paid paternity or maternity leave am I entitled to? The list gets longer with every election of a liberal or progressive or left-wing party. And then each entitlement becomes a right. But we're not done. There are even more destructive effects of socialism. Entitlements create citizens who lack a character trait that every human should have: gratitude. You cannot be happy if you are not grateful, and you cannot be a good person if you're not grateful. That's why we constantly tell our children, say thank you. But socialism undoes that. After all, why would a person be grateful for receiving an entitlement? Who's going to be grateful for getting what they're entitled to? So instead of thank you, the citizen of the welfare state is taught to say, what more am I entitled to? Yet the left insists that it's capitalism and the free market, not socialism, that produces selfish people. But the truth is that capitalism and the free market produce much less selfish people. Teaching people to work hard and take care of themselves and others, and that they should earn what they receive, produces less selfish, not more selfish people. Capitalism teaches people to work more. Socialism teaches people to demand more. Which attitude do you think will make a better society? I'm Dennis Prager. To subscribe to our YouTube channel, click here. To help keep our videos free, donate here.
Join me in welcoming Dennis Prager.
Anyway, it is great to be at YAF. Thank you for having me. Some of you, I'm prepared to be humbled, but I am too curious to know. How many of you have seen a Prager University video before? Oh. Who hasn't? No. I just wanted to embarrass the handful who didn't. I'm very touched and I'm very happy because we're losing the battle for the United States. I need to say something in advance with regard to my talk. It's a very tough line that I walk every day on my radio show because I totally understand. I've been broadcasting for 33 years consecutively. I understand how to make a good show, or I would have looked for a different line of work a long time ago. So the very thin line I have to walk is between telling it as bad as it is, but not depressing my audience. It is not easy. It's part of the reason that I thank God blessed me with a very goofy sense of humor, and it has bailed me out in life personally, and I think bailed the show out, because we do have a lot of laughs. But I have the same dilemma in speaking to you. You know, don't you want to inspire young people? Isn't that the whole point? No, that's not the whole point. The whole point is to tell you what's happening. That's the whole point. And what's happening is that the American Revolution is being undone. I mean that literally. I took a vow in my first year of radio never to engage in exaggeration or hyperbole, because over time you just lose your credibility. And just an aside, credibility is all we have. It's the biggest thing we have. And even, not even lying, just getting a reputation for exaggerating, you'll begin to erode your credibility. So when I say that the American Revolution is being undone, it's unraveling, I mean that literally. So I'd like to explain to you as clearly as I can in the time that I have what the war is about. There is a war for America. My belief is that we are threatened externally by Islamic terror, by Islamism, and I'll explain Islamism as opposed to Islam, and I wrote 2 more books since that bio was written, and I only mention that because one of them is my life's work, really. It explains Americanism, leftism, and Islamism. It's called Still the Best Hope. And that really does explain them. Islamism is the belief that Islam should be society's religion and that Sharia may be imposed. That's what Islamism is. I use terms very precisely, and I want you to know what it is. Even Islamists, however, are within two categories: those who wish to impose it violently and those who wish to impose it through democracy. Of course, it's not a fully clear distinction, because even if you have it through democracy, what about the 40% of the people who don't want Sharia to dominate their lives? I'm talking about Muslims, forget non-Muslims. But anyway, I just wanted you to understand. Externally, there is a threat, a real threat, as you well know, to the Western world. Internally in the United States and in the West, there is a more dangerous foe to our culture and way of life, and that is leftism. Leftism is not liberalism. I have no problem with liberalism. I have a great deal of affection, in fact, for classical liberalism. I'm talking about leftism. Leftism is as desirous as undoing Western civilization as the Islamists are. There's a big difference. One is violent and one isn't. Obviously, I have leftists in my family. They don't want to kill me. Well, maybe that was overstating it. But in any event, we love each other, and I have no problem. By the way, that too is a very important thing to understand. Nice and wonderful people can have terrible ideas. You must understand that, because it's confusing. They don't believe that. They believe that we are evil. We believe they are wrong. It is one of the great differences between left and right. We are definitionally evil. I will come back to that. They are not necessarily evil. There are evil leftists, but not all people on the left are evil. Some of them are kind and wonderful. They're misguided, and they're doing as much damage as the evil ones, but good people doing bad things is a history of the world. Let me tell you from my religion, you heard I've written an introduction to Judaism. So I'm a practicing Jew, and I've written a lot on Judaism, and let me tell you a very interesting insight of Judaism. You are born the Jewish view is that you are born with two, in Hebrew it's yetzer, which means creative impulse, or urges, one to good and one to bad. Makes perfect sense. And they're in constant battle throughout your life, and you should have the good impulse conquer the bad impulse. It's pretty basic and simple. I met a rabbi many years ago I went to for advice in my 20s. He was a prominent American rabbi, and he said to me in passing, he said, "Dennis, I want to tell you something." And he used the Hebrew terms, I'll use it in English. He said, "You know, I want you to know, I pretty much have my evil impulse under control. I can really say that. It's my good impulse that gets me into trouble." It was one of the most brilliant things ever said to me. Good impulse, good intentions mean nothing. Nothing. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That is one cliche that is true. Meaning well doesn't mean anything. Most people who are, as you saw in the video, oh, socialism, we want to take care of people. Yeah, but it produces terrible results. Better people are produced on the selfish end, if you will, of capitalism than from the selfless end of socialism. Good intentions don't mean anything. Results are everything. Everything. I speak in churches as much as I speak in synagogues, and I'm very involved with both Christians and Jews in life. I'm very blessed that way. So I always kid my Christian friends, even at their churches, because Jews and Christians have a very different way of raising charity for their church or synagogue. In Christian life, they say we're sending a hat, or not a hat, or a bowl or whatever it is, please, whatever the Lord prompts you to give, please give. And so people, they feel the Lord prompts them to give $1, and they put in $1. At the synagogue, I have seen this actually, when they will have a big fundraiser, they'll go, all right, Bernstein, we see you had a really good year last year. What do you say? The Torah says give 10%. They never say to Jews, give what your heart desires, and they raise more money. That's it. It's as simple as that. The well-intentioned, I'll follow my heart. Yeah, you get $1, $5. The other one, hey, you owe 10%. You get a lot more money. And you could do a lot more good. Mormons do the same thing. Some Christian groups tithe. Some Catholics tithe. Anyway, don't rely on the heart. Rely on what is right. Okay. We have a battle. The battle is the American Trinity versus leftism. This American Trinity idea came to me about 20 years ago as I was getting ready to go to bed one night, and I took out the coins in my pocket, and I looked at them, and all of a sudden I had the answer to the question, what is America about? It's not easy to answer that question, and I had devoted my life to talking and writing about this. And the answer is on every coin and every banknote. We have a trinity, just like Christianity has a trinity, America has one. Liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum. That's our trinity. I didn't make it up. It's on every coin. That's our trinity. No other country on earth has those three principles as its guideline. It is a uniquely American value system. And I'd like to explain it in a nutshell and then tell you how the left is making war on all three of the principles of the American Trinity. So number one is liberty. There were two revolutions in the late 1700s, the American and the French. The French emphasized equality, the French Revolution. The American Revolution emphasized liberty. Yes, the French Revolution was liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, fraternity, and equality, but it emphasized, as it must, equality, because you can't have liberty and equality equally important. The moment liberty is number one, you will have inequality. The moment liberty is number one, a shortstop for the Chicago Cubs will make more money than a neurosurgeon. But the neurosurgeon does more good. Is that fair? It's not fair. That's a separate issue. However, a shortstop in a free society will make more money than a teacher, than a policeman, than a nurse, than a firefighter, than a surgeon. That's the way that's the way liberty works. Equality says, no, that is wrong. The nurse should get as much as the shortstop. That's it. That's your choice. Liberty is not the French Revolution. It is about equality. The left follows the French Revolution, and it makes sense. America was not tempted by the French Revolution until Americans started getting doctorates in Europe in the late 1800s, because our universities generally were not offering doctorates. And that's when leftism came into America, largely from Germany, which already had a socialist state under the Kaiser at that time. That's how it got here. Europe followed the French Revolution. America followed the American Revolution. The left in America adores Europe. The ideal is Sweden. The ideal is Norway, Denmark, France, Germany. That's the ideal. Everything is paid for. People are taken care of. Unions have phenomenal power. That's the ideal to the left, not the American Revolution. Just understand, it is being underdone, undermined. You just heard from Newt Gingrich, who said it, and it's exactly right. I'm paraphrasing, you can lose everything in one generation. If you do not teach the next generation your values, it's over. And you have not been taught it, and nor was I. This is not new. I was not taught it. The generation that fought World War II did not raise their children with American values. They raised their children with the following. I remember hearing it over and over and over from families of World War II veterans. And it was this: I want to give my children everything I did not have. I did not have any wealth. I want to give them money. I grew up in the Depression. I want to give them everything material that I didn't have. And I remember even at college age saying, but wait a minute, that's great, but you're not giving them everything you did have. They did give them everything they didn't have: college education, money, but they didn't give them what they did have. They didn't give them their religiosity. They didn't give them their affirmation of America. So that's when it started. This is not new with your generation. In my generation, when I was at Columbia in graduate school, there were students taking over buildings. None of this is new. If anything, the radicals were even more active on campus than today. We're now seeing at universities the ultimate consequence of what started then, and that is the end of free speech. But we'll talk about that. I will talk about that in a moment. So number one is liberty versus what the left wants, which is material equality. We believe in equality, the equality of birth in the sense that we're all created in God's image, and all men are created equal in that sense, but we don't believe in equality of result. Number two, in God we trust. Some of you are undoubtedly secular, some of you might even be atheist. It doesn't matter. The United States was founded on the proposition that God is necessary for liberty. And I need to explain this, and if you are an atheist, you need to confront this. Now, I know atheists who say, I agree with this. God is necessary. I personally don't believe in God, but I understand that God is necessary for liberty. And the founders all said this, all, that's what you have to understand. Jefferson, Franklin. I cite in my book, the one on America, Islam, and the left, I cite in there Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin is called a deist, which it's a lie. I hate using the word because there's nothing worse than a lie. But it is a lie that he was a deist. It is a lie that Jefferson was a deist. They all believed in God. They all believed in the Judeo-Christian God. Not all of them had Christian Orthodox principles, as in other words, believing in the Christian Trinity. That doesn't mean that they were atheists or deists. So Jefferson and Franklin. So Franklin, in his autobiography, described what he believed. He believed in a God who intervenes in human affairs. He believed in a God who judges people and who will have an afterlife of punishment or reward. In other words, he and I believe exactly the same thing. Now, why is God essential to the American Revolution and has been essential to American life? And this is part of the reason the left hates us. The left hates the idea of a God-based society. It believes in man, not God. You must understand that. That is critical to understanding leftism. Even though there are leftists who will go to church, it doesn't matter. Leftism wants a godless society, and they've created one, the first in history. It's called Europe. Western Europe is essentially godless. Now, you may say that's wonderful. A leftist would. I don't think it's wonderful, but let me explain why it's related to liberty. If you get this, my visit is totally worth it. I flew from LA yesterday. I'm flying back tonight. That's how much I value talking to you. That's a big trip. It's not around the corner, LA. So, I want you to understand this connection. Here it goes. Human beings are not basically good. That's proposition number one. By the way, it is one of the great divides between conservatives and liberals, not just leftists, liberals. They think people are basically good because they live in John Lennon's Imagine world. They do. The left is afraid of life. The idea that men and women are basically different frightens them. There's a deep fear that permeates the soul of a person on the left, and they're frightened by life. They're frightened by the bad news that human nature isn't good, which is, by the way, the foundational belief of Judaism and Christianity, which we call Judeo-Christian values. Judaism and Christianity have different theologies, but they have very similar values. That's why America is the quintessential Judeo-Christian nation. These were founded by Christians rooted in the Hebrew Scriptures. So, if we're not basically good, how do you avoid a society of criminality? Right? If we're not basically good, there are only, therefore, two possibilities. The state will control your behavior, or you will control your behavior. Right? Makes sense so far? So, the left opts for the state to control your behavior. That's why the bigger the state, the more the leftism, the bigger the state. The bigger the state, the more the controls. It's very simple. The founders wanted a free society. But how do you make a free society if human nature isn't good? If people are accountable to God and religion for their moral behavior, then they will be good. We're talking about Judeo-Christian religions. Protestantism, Catholicism, later Latter-day Saints, Mormonism, obviously Judaism. That's what we're talking about. Then that's what they were talking about. All right? You are accountable not to the state, but to God. That is why, in a term that I am sure you have probably never used in your life, a very, very common term that was used to describe a good person in America, and this even predates my birth by one generation. But in my parents' generation, it was common, and or certainly in the 19th century, the highest accolade you could give a good person was, she is a God-fearing woman. He is a God-fearing man. Why is that good? That means you believe that God monitors your behavior. The left loathes the idea of a God who monitors behavior and who judges and punishes. First and foremost, at the core of leftism is a hatred of authority, whether it is police, whether it is teachers, or whether it is God. They want all authority in a secular state, but any other competing authority, including parents, parental authority is always removed in any totalitarian regime. That is why God is necessary for a free society, because if people have to answer to God, and by the way, it's very simple proof. There are many, but here's one. Look it up, as they say. This will fascinate you. A number of professors, secular professors, conducted a study and found that where people believed in hell, there was less crime. Not where people believed in heaven. That had no influence, or often increased the amount of crime. It's where people believed in hell. If people think they'll be punished for what they do, they'll act better. That is so basic, you have to go to university to unlearn it. Because, I mean it sincerely. It is very hard to leave college less stupid than you came in. It is hard. I mean this literally. You are taught not to think. And to the extent that you think, it is unclear. So what I just said, people will act better if they fear punishment, which a 5-year-old will say, of course. If you get a PhD, you will say, no, that's simplistic. Why is it simplistic? Really? Why do people have radar detectors on highways? Because they're afraid that the police will catch them if they speed. If there are no police around, they speed. That's it. What more do you need to know? I do. I go faster if there are no police. That's the way it works in life. If there is a God who judges, which Judaism and Christianity believe is the essence of religion, of course there is a judging God who demands certain things, then people will be better. So America was founded on the belief that people will be accountable morally to the God of Judeo-Christian values. Drop that and the state increases. As secularism increases, the state gets bigger. Tells you more and more how to live, what to do. And number 3, e pluribus unum, from many one. Of course America had racism. Obviously, I'll talk about that in a moment. But I just want to note, the essence of the American experiment is race doesn't matter. Do you know, however, if you say race doesn't matter, at the University of California, that is called a microaggression now? If you say the only race I believe in is the human race, you are considered a racist. That is now, it's official. It is actually listed at the University of California. The essence of liberalism, the essence of the American experiment, that race doesn't matter. And I hereby declare, this individual buys that belief. I am as interested in your color as I am in the color of your eyes. In fact, I might be a little more interested in the color of your eyes, but only a little. So I will go to an even more trivial aspect. Your color is as important as your shoe size, okay? Have I trivialized it sufficiently? Color means nothing. You are a human. It's the only race that matters. That is what America always believed. That is what Martin Luther King believed. But it is not what the left believes. The left actually believes race is important. They're racists. They are pure racists. The only other group to say race was important were Nazis. I'm not calling the left Nazis. I'm merely telling you how despicable. No, I'm not. It would be irresponsible. But how irresponsible it is, the notion that race matters. Cornel West wrote a book, Race Matters, but it doesn't. Nor does his book, but that's a separate issue. God, you're good. If you know about Cornel West, you're one bloody impressive group. This is an undoing of the American Revolution. The only identity that any school should affirm is American identity. If you want to preserve an ethnic or cultural identity, go right ahead. I was sent to a Jewish school, but I was American. We said the pledge every day in our class. I don't care. You go. You know, where I live, where I broadcast from, has more Armenians than any place in the world except for Yerevan, Armenia, the capital of Armenia. I spoke at I don't care if they send their kids to Armenian schools. Means no, that's fine. Go to any school you want. Preserve any language you want. I think it's beautiful. That's fine. But we're all American. That's the difference. And by the way, we have done a better job than any country in the world assimilating people. So let me make a declaration. We are living in the least racist, the least racist, multi-ethnic, multiracial country that has ever existed in the world. To call America racist is a libel. This is a non-racist country. It has racists in it. Of course it does. I know that. There are anti-Semites in America. But it is not an anti-Semitic country. I could say as one who is not only a Jew, but has taught Jewish history on the college level and written books and hundreds of articles on Jewish themes. This is the most pro-Jewish country Jews have ever lived in the history of the Jewish people. Are there anti-Semites in America? So what? Yes, of course. But it's a good country for Jews. It's a good country for blacks. How about this? If you know this, I'll just leave. Did you know that more black Africans have come to the United States willingly than came as slaves? New York Times statistic from the 1990s. More black Africans have come to the United States as willing immigrants than came on slave ships. And that's with the difficulty of ever getting into the United States if you're not from Latin America, where you could walk over a non-border. I'll never forget, I was at JFK last year and having my shoes shined, and the guy was a black guy, and I talk to everybody. I love talking to people. It's one of my hobbies in life. So I was talking to the guy, and so where are you from? And I don't remember what country he was from, but he was not American born. So I said to him, listen, I'm just curious. Do you think America's racist? Now, it was very interesting what happened then, because it was clear that he felt a little funny. Now, you could say he felt a little funny because I'm white and he'd feel funny saying, yeah, it's racist. But I don't think that most people who think it's racist feel funny saying it's racist. They actually want to tell you it's racist. So he looked up and he said, well, to tell you the truth, no. He found it hard to admit as a black man that it wasn't racist, because to say that is to be a traitor to all of leftism and the belief that you're a traitor to fellow blacks. He thought it's the greatest country on earth. He couldn't believe his luck moving here. Americans aren't racist. And with regard to racism, please understand, all of humanity throughout history was racist, and all of humans in history had slaves. So the intelligent person doesn't ask, why did America have slavery? The intelligent person asks, why did America abolish slavery? It's the same thing. It's the same thing with regard to poverty. The question isn't, why is there poverty? Poverty is universal. That's the human norm. The only question to ask is, why is there affluence? And the answer is capitalism and liberty. That's how. Liberty and capitalism, you get affluence. Try it anywhere, anywhere. In Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, anywhere. They didn't try it in Latin America. I wrote an article years ago, an open letter to Hispanics, and I have a question for them, and that is, why would you want to replicate in America what you fled from? That is my question, and you have no idea how many Hispanics have written to say that question changed their views. Why don't you stay home? What is wrong with Latin American culture? Why would anyone leave their language, their families, their friends, their culture, their city, everything in life to go to another country? Because the other country's better. That's why. That's the reason. Nobody goes from good to worse. Nobody moves to worse. They move to better. So ask, why is it better? And the answer is because, unlike South America, we didn't buy leftist, socialist, statist ideas. Why would you vote for the party that wants to make America like Guatemala, like Mexico? Why would you want to do that? But they don't think that way. And I totally understand. They can't think that way because only Americans think that way. And most Americans today don't think that way. That's why we're losing the battle. We haven't been taught what we have. That is the American trinity. The left is undoing all of them. All of them. Instead of e pluribus unum, it's e pluribus plurum, for many, many. There are colleges that won't put up the American flag because they don't want to offend non-Americans. Is that an idiocy? I studied in England. I expected to see the British flag. I would have felt silly. Would I be offended? I'll never forget this offended stuff. Oh God, it drives me out of my mind. Offended. That's what they're weak. There's a weakness at the heart of leftists. They're easily offended, because they're narcissists. So here's an example. A female professor of law at an Indiana law university, it wasn't Indiana University, it was some other university in Indiana, wrote a piece which I read. She's leading a campaign to remove the Christmas tree from the major building at her law school, because she feels that it offends non-Christians. So we invited her onto my show, poor thing didn't know that I'm a non-Christian. So she comes on, and I say, so let me understand, you feel that a Christmas tree offends non-Christians. Well, I'm a non-Christian. I'm a Jew. I don't celebrate Christmas theologically. I want there to be a Christmas tree. 95% of my fellow Americans celebrate Christmas. Why would I want to tear that down? She had no answer. I mean, and I never humiliate guests, and it's easy to whenever I have someone from the left, but I never do because I want, A, I don't believe in doing it, and B, I want left people to come on my show. If they know I'm going to just try to hurt their feelings, then I'm totally right not to come on, but I never do. I'm very respectful. But she had no answer. I said, you have to understand, I am an American. Christmas is a national holiday. I love my nation. I want Christmas trees. I want to say Merry Christmas. I do not say Happy Holidays. Whenever someone says Happy Holidays, I said, what holidays did you have in mind? Do you understand how narcissistic and how nihilistic even it is, the idea that you're offended if you hear Christmas and you don't celebrate it? My God, in Israel, when it is the Jewish New Year, everybody says Shana Tova, which is Hebrew for good year, which is the way they say Happy New Year. Now, can you imagine, I say to Jews who are on the left, which is almost redundant, but not entirely, but I say to them, wait a minute, so should a quarter of Israel is not Jewish? That's a lot of people. Should the quarter of Israel that isn't Jewish be offended if they're wished a Happy New Year when it isn't their New Year? Should Israeli radio stop saying Shana Tova because a quarter of its listeners aren't Jewish? Again, there's no answer. There is no, because they don't think, it's all felt. You must know this about leftism. It is 100% rooted in feelings, zero in the intellect. Intellects use intellectual language, but it is all rooted in feeling. It is not intellectually based. It is not soundly reasoned. They want to undo liberty, in God we trust, and e pluribus unum. Finally, I just want to go through a very quick list of how problematic the left is. Everything the left touches is ultimately ruined. I cannot think of an exception. Sometimes it happens immediately, sometimes it happens over time. Great example is the universities. These were gems in American society. The university today has become a laughing stock. Not in biology, not in chemistry, not in sometimes in economics. That's correct. But in the liberal arts, you can get a BA at UCLA in English without having ever read a single Shakespeare play. It's one of the prominent universities of the United States. Again, you can get a BA in English and never taken a course in Shakespeare, never read a Shakespeare play. English departments are just departments to do something else. They're not there to teach English literature. They're there to teach multiculturalism and to indoctrinate you into becoming a leftist. The universities are now seminaries. Christian seminaries are there to produce Christians, and universities are there to produce leftists. That's why you start with the nonsense of white privilege. Do you know what privilege there should be, first of all? You know what the biggest privilege you have? American privilege. That's number one. I'll give you another privilege. Another privilege is I have a father in my life privilege. That's a privilege. I have two parents. That's a privilege. There are a lot of privileges. White is pretty low on the list. But that's what you are indoctrinated into, and people want to believe it because of guilt, because they don't want to be offensive, or whatever the reason. It is truly problematic. The university has been ruined by the left. The suppression of free speech, the non-inviting of conservatives, and the pure racism. There are black graduations and white graduations at many colleges. Since when is that liberal? Liberals, the liberals I grew up with would not believe that this was happening. The whole point was integration. Segregation was what you thought racists believe in, but now the left believes in it. Number two, the left, and this is what turned me away from the left when I was your age. The left does not believe in confronting, identifying, or fighting evil. I am religiously inclined. Perhaps my favorite verse in the entire Bible is from the Psalms. Those of you who love God must hate evil. If you don't hate evil, you don't love God. One of the great ideas ever recorded in history in any culture. They don't hate evil. They hate inequality. They hate carbon emissions. No, it's very important. We hate different things. It's very important. And I realize it with communism. Communism slaughtered more people than Nazism. I'm not saying it was worse than Nazism. You can't get worse than Nazism. But in terms of sheer numbers, it was about 20 to 40 million, we'll never know the number, in the Soviet Union, including the genocide of Ukrainians in the number of about 6 million, which nobody talks about. Nobody talks about it. It's like a non-issue. You know why? Because the Soviets did it, not Nazis. And I'm saying this as a Jew who has always been preoccupied with the Holocaust, but others have had their spectacular sufferings too. And how many here know about the Ukrainian genocide? Right, 4 of you, 5 of you, and you are truly knowledgeable about stuff. It is unbelievable it is not taught. Anyway, Mao killed about 60 million, so you already have hit about almost 100 million. Then, of course, a fifth of the Cambodian people were slaughtered by the communists. What I realized when I was your age was that the left did not hate communism. They hated Reagan. And when Ronald Reagan said that the Soviet Union was an evil empire, they went ballistic. The New York Times, the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, the Washington Post, NBC, ABC, CBS, they went ballistic, not against the Soviets, against Reagan for saying they were evil. That's what they hate. When you call evil evil, the left hates you. You have to call polluters evil. You have to call inequality evil, but not mass genocide. That doesn't seem to disturb them. Fighting evil disturbs them. That is the reason they wanted us out of Vietnam, which was as legitimate morally as the war in Korea, which is another unknown. South Korea is one of the most bustling economies, freest societies on earth for one reason. 37,000 Americans died to keep the southern half of that peninsula free. The northern half is a large concentration camp. That's what American troops have done, contrary to the left-wing view of all American wars as imperialist. Evil is the Achilles heel of the left. They're crazed about carbon emissions. Do you know what the Secretary of State of the United States said yesterday? You do know? Well, all right. So I trust that you will act accordingly and stop using air conditioners and refrigerators. They laugh at Republicans. I mean, it is nauseating. I mean, to be honest, Donald Trump has said a lot of dumb things, but none of them approach. I will say that. I don't think any of them approach that refrigerators and air conditioners are as great a threat as Islamic terror. No, I follow him. I've been very critical, but I don't know of a statement that matches that in the colossal nature of its idiocy. It is not just idiotic, it is colossally idiotic. It is morally idiotic. But everyone on the left agrees with him. That's the point. He's not an aberration. The New York Times didn't have an editorial. We can't believe our Secretary of State said something that's stupid, because they agree with him. National debt of $19 trillion. Whenever I speak at campuses, on the rare occasion that I get invited because of my views, which are just conservative, they're not exactly over the top, but I do, and I start with students, because it's usually obviously a mixed bag, or even mostly liberal, and I say, I just want to say on behalf of my generation to you, thank you. Never has any generation decided to take on the debts of a previous generation as you have my generation's debts. I can't thank you enough. You are really special. And they never hear this. We're spending like crazy, and you get to pay it. Somebody's going to have to pay it, or the economy will implode. And then you get war, civil war, and so on. So, right, I mean, $19 trillion. You can print all the money you want, which in fact the Obama administration has been doing, and that still doesn't solve the issue. I'm done in under 5 minutes, because I want to have time for you to have a Q&A. Anti-capitalism. It is unbelievable. There's one answer to this aside from what you just saw at the Prager University video. And by the way, most of the videos are not given by me, just that one happens to be. Capitalism is the only thing that has lifted humans from poverty. There is nothing else. This is the rule. Capitalism creates wealth, socialism spends it. Socialism has never created wealth. It cannot create wealth. That is not what it's supposed to do. It spends the wealth that capitalism creates. The only reason people are out of poverty anywhere on earth is capitalism. There is no other way. The free market, building up of capital and investment, is the only way to lift people from poverty. If you love humanity, you must embrace capitalism. But they don't love humanity. They love ideas. They're in love with ideas, like the idea of equality. And finally, there is a totalitarian, this is all under the list of the everything the left touches, it damages. There is totalitarian DNA on the left. That's the scariest part. They wish to shut us down. That's why I said we're not wrong in their eyes, we're evil in their eyes. We are what I call six-herb. Sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, and bigoted. That is what we are. Whenever they differ with us, there was never an attempt to actually engage our ideas. The Los Angeles Times announced it is not publishing anything that is skeptical about the climate change theories that are offered today. Even if you believe the climate is changing, they won't publish you. You have to believe it is caused by humans, and that it will lead to the extinction of life on Earth. Otherwise, you are a quote-unquote denier. We have scientists at Prager University videos like Richard Lindzen of MIT, longly regarded as the leading climatologist in the United States at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's a quote-unquote denier. But we're called anti-science. That way they don't have to deal with us. So, folks, you got a big task. You literally have a country to save. I am just thrilled that you exist. I hope you're thrilled I'm existing. But because we need each other terribly. We do. This is the greatest country that ever was created. That is not a line of the right. That is a line of truth. That's why people want to come here. Let's save it, because it is the last best hope for mankind, as Lincoln put it. Where are you going to move if we fail? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. All right, I broadcast my show at noon, but so I still want to take to whatever time you can afford to questions, comments, and brief alternate speeches. So if anybody, folks line up at microphones, is that it? Yes, sir. Okay, please. And could you tell me your name and where you're from?
Hey, I'm Josh, and I'm from the University of the great state of Tennessee. And I just had a question for any of my friends who are like confused or not sure, liberals. What is the best video that you have out there that I should show them first?
Well, there are about 140 videos, and that's a very hard. We try to make everyone the best. That's why I guess it wasn't mentioned to you. We will have this year. We will have had 140 million views. Prager University right now is the largest maker of videos with our values in the world. And it is seen around the world, and that's because we work so hard on every single one. I would like them to see, if they're willing to see 6, to start them perhaps. I did a course, and remember, I only do about 1 out of 8 videos. But I did a course on differences between left and right, which is pretty powerful. And I don't yell at anybody. That's why people can watch. I don't call anyone names. I assume people have good intentions. But I think that series, Differences Between Left and Right, is life-changing. If there's one video, well, maybe if you like the one you just saw, because they think socialism is altruistic and capitalism is selfish. So that's a good one. So that would be my answer. But you would know best. So watch all 140 and let me know what you thought. I'm serious. I would like to know what any of you would think would be the best first video to show somebody. Okay. Is there anybody else? Right. Okay. Very good. All right, everybody. It was a great honor. And you give me hope. I may have depressed you, but you actually lifted me up. So thanks very much. Thank you.
As inflation skyrocketed, crime soared, the border was erased, Afghanistan was a disaster, and Joe Biden destroyed our country, the American people have been besieged with lies from the partisan witch hunt known as the Unselect Committee on January 6th. The committee cut the part of my speech out where I encouraged protesters to make their voices heard peacefully and patriotically, but nobody ever says that. Liz Cheney, who lost her congressional race in Wyoming by the largest margin ever for a sitting congressperson, that's 40%, deliberately omitted the part of my tweet where I told protesters to go home with love and in peace. They claimed I did not respond for 187 minutes, when in fact I issued a statement urging peace and respect for law enforcement within 25 minutes of the Capitol breach, and another statement 30 minutes after that. The real story is what the Unselect Committee did not mention in their fake trial. And this was really fake. Days before the protest, I urged the deployment of 10,000 to 20,000 National Guard troops to keep the event safe for all involved. We wanted security, we wanted safety. There was no insurrection, and there wasn't going to be an insurrection. It was made up by these sick people. Nancy Pelosi and the D.C. mayor refused. If they'd listened to me, my recommendation, none of this would have happened, and you wouldn't have heard about January 6th as we know it. They covered up multiple tweets, and they covered up a video which were censored by Twitter and the FBI, in which I called for law and order and for no violence. And then they pushed an absurd and discredited story where I supposedly lunged for the steering wheel in an attempt to commandeer a presidential limousine. Think of it. I lunged for a steering wheel, and they believe that story. Nobody believes that story. The committee barely even discussed the catastrophic security failures at the Capitol, and they didn't discuss the other thing, the reason that everybody went there, the election, which was a corrupt disaster. They did not discuss why the doors were flung wide open for people to walk right in, and they didn't discuss the role of federal informants. Most importantly, the Unselect Committee did not produce a single shred of evidence that I in any way intended or wanted violence at our Capitol. The evidence does not exist because the claim is baseless and a monstrous lie. They know it. It's just like the Russia hoax. This is absolutely no different. It's misinformation, the only thing they're good at. Cheating in elections, misinformation. The events of January 6th were not an insurrection. They were a protest that tragically got out of control and which the left has been weaponizing ever since to censor, spy on, and persecute American citizens. The entire phony hoax is about taking away your speech, taking away your vote, and taking away your freedom. These are sick people. These are Marxists, and they're very dangerous and very bad people. From the day I came down the escalator, it has been one witch hunt after another. Whether it was the Russia, Ukraine, impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, the FBI censorship of the laptop from hell, the boxes hoax where if you take a look at that one, they raided Mar-a-Lago, and under the Presidential Records Act, they're not allowed to do that. And then if you look at the Clinton Sox case, it's a total victory for all presidents that leave the White House with things. So that's another hoax, a big hoax. And they put a major Trump hater, and his family is a major Trump hater, and his friends are all Trump haters, and he's in charge of this investigation. The people aren't going to stand for it. Alongside these other persecutions, the Unselect Committee will go down in history as a con job and a disgrace. They want to stop us from taking back our country, but they will fail. They will not win. We will make America great again.
Okay, now let's get into Steven Crowder. Like I told you earlier in the thing, we're going to watch Steven Crowder. You're going to see how these huge, the most wealthiest city in the world in North America was destroyed by liberal and leftist bullshit, you know. So you're going to see, you just watch this and you're going to see parallels in Canadian society with what happened in Detroit. You know, free handouts, the educational system went to hell, you know, and people's moving out of the cities. In Canada too, they're going to the country, they're going to places like Alberta. Same problems you see that happen in Detroit, you're going to see here. Anyways, without any further ado, let's get into Steve, then we're going to close out the cast.
Well, I've taken you to Canada, to Guantanamo Bay, but this time it really looks like I've pulled the short straw because I'm here in the Motor City. Welcome to Detroit. Detroit. It's become a bit of a punchline in this country, but you have to ask yourself, how did one of the wealthiest cities in the country become this? Detroit used to be the city with the highest median household income of anywhere in the country, and now it ranks 66th out of 68. It also has some of the highest crime rates, unemployment rate, and the lowest graduation rates of anywhere in the USA. In a nutshell, Detroit sucks. But why? Oh, that's why. I forgot.
Well, to start, it's no secret that Detroit is run entirely by leftists. Every single mayor of Detroit since 1961 has been a liberal. It is the city of entitlement programs. Leftists always tout their policies as a way to help the poor and give our fellow man a leg up. Well, how's that working out for them? And how did it get this way? It all started with Mayor Jerome Kavanaugh, elected in 1961. He expanded the role of government in Detroit to an unprecedented level, particularly under President Lyndon Johnson's presidency with the Model Cities program. What's that? You've never heard of the Model Cities program? Well, I'll show you.
Now, the Model Cities program is considered by many to be the first great step in central urban planning. What happened was they pumped $400 million into a 9-mile square radius of Detroit, the area that you see here, in order to make it an exemplary city for the rest of the USA to follow. And of course, that sort of set a trend in motion where Detroit ended up getting hundreds of dollars in every single federal bailout, loan, or grant that you can possibly imagine. Really, Detroit is the poster boy for leftist policies at work. Now, clearly, they didn't succeed in creating a model city, but the government did succeed in creating an entirely state-dependent city, which many people think was their goal in the first place. And that allowed the government to tell people in this city what they could build, where they could build it, which businesses would stay open, which businesses would close. And of course, in exchange for that stringent government control, they promised them things like education, training, healthcare, more entitlement programs. It smells funny. Speaking of education, how do Detroit schools stack up? There certainly isn't any lack of funding here in Detroit, as students of Detroit receive on average $11,100 per student. Compare that to the national average of $9,600, yet Detroit students enjoy a graduation rate of actually 25%. And a sad fact of the matter is that a student of Detroit has a higher chance of ending up in prison than graduating high school. And you have to ask yourself, well, how have the oh-so-powerful teachers' unions of Detroit failed the students? The truth is they have been refusing to bend on policies for years that would benefit the students, including merit-based pay, increased teacher-to-student ratios, giving incentives to better teachers, or, of course, the school choice program that we've spoken about here at PJTV and has been a tremendous success wherever it's been implemented across the country.
Could it be that the teachers' unions aren't really designed to help the students, but the unions? Of course, public education isn't the only place in Detroit where unions get to flex their power.
Also, plants and factories like these are what made the big three American auto companies, Detroit, the envy of the rest of the industrialized world for so long. After World War II, cars were being produced rapidly, people were buying, and Detroit was prosperous, which makes you wonder what happened. It's no secret that American auto companies have required federal bailout after bailout, and liberal politicians will tell you that that is because of poor management and not enough fuel-efficient cars. They'll say that when the gas prices rose, the economy crashed, and people wanted smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. Mismanagement, that very well may be true, but not enough green cars?
GM alone offered more gas-efficient cars than Honda or Toyota. As a matter of fact, they had more in their lineup than any car company on the market. Americans still didn't buy those cars, however, as the #1 selling car in the country is still the F-150. Actually, out of the top 10 selling cars in the US, 4 of them were trucks or SUVs, with only 2 officially being categorized as compacts. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Steven, those are just good gas cars. What about the hybrids? Good question. American automakers have more of those too. Not only do people not buy them as displayed by all hybrids accounting for a total 2% of the market share, but when people do buy them, it doesn't make these companies any money. When it comes to experimental cars, both Ford and GM have admitted to having years of bleeding red ink ahead. Honda hasn't fared much better. Even the most successful hybrid car, the Prius, is still widely believed by analysts to be losing money on each one sold, according to the Washington Post. But if it's not the lack of green cars that made American car makers so crappy, what was it? Enter the United Auto Workers Union. Even under tough economic conditions, concessions are never a part of the UAW's vocabulary. Fully aware of the fact that their company will go bankrupt under these conditions, the UAW still made sure that they received 7 weeks paid vacation each year, maintained job banks, meaning that UAW workers rarely, if ever, actually get fired. They're simply sent to job banks where they are paid nearly full wages not to work. How's that for job security? Get their $74 an hour wage in both salary and benefits. Compare that to the $42 an hour for a comparable Japanese company auto worker, or even $26 in the private sector. The cost, of course, includes some of the most luxurious healthcare coverage offered on the planet, covering not only hospital, surgical, and drug coverage, but extravagances such as hearing aids and LASIK eye surgery. So with every car you buy, you're paying an additional $1,200 in employee benefits that you wouldn't be paying with the competition. American made. All this adds up to the average UAW worker earning $130,000 a year in wages and benefits, and GM alone has had to pay over $100 billion in retiree healthcare costs in the last 15 years alone. And there's no end in sight, as only to pay another $47 billion in the near future. There it is, folks. While you and your family buckle down to plow through these tough economic times, the labor of the UAW continue to live like kings and make virtually no compromises. After all, why would they if the federal government just keeps bailing them out? And why wouldn't the federal government keep bailing them out when it's the unions who elect them? Guess just how much of the UAW's political contributions were donated to conservative or Republican candidates in 2008. A whopping 0%. One of the big ironies in all this is that liberal environmentalists support the unions because the unions elect them. But because the UAW labor costs are so high, it dissuades automakers from investing in lower profit margin smaller cars, so they instead focus on larger vehicles and SUVs. That's right, folks. The UAW is bad for the environment. So the UAW runs the auto industry into the ground, and the teachers' unions run education into the ground. So what happens to Detroit as a whole? Good people leave, poverty rises, and so does crime. Unemployment is at 28% in Detroit right now, and the murder rate is over 5 times that of the national average. Actually, 7 out of 10 murders go completely unsolved. So if you want to kill someone, head on down to Detroit. Not only that, but the average price of a home in Detroit is now around $5,700. Sound hard to believe? Not when you see what many of them look like.
You can see here you got Christmas decorations. You got glue. You got gasoline and 5 bottles of antifreeze. Antifreeze is the main ingredient used in meth. Freshly eaten chip bags, beer cans, Wendy's cups. This is not. Someone is living here, so we should probably get going. At least they put up some Christmas decorations to spread some Christmas cheer, so the people still seem to be in good spirits. Got a lighter here. Fun for the whole family activity. Fixer-upper, but, cozy. Someone's missing a glove. Go down in the basement if you want. We have a nice 2-story in the Detroit area. Cozy, rustic. Oh, look at this. Come on, come here. I wonder if anything untoward is going on here. You ever see the movie Four Brothers with Mark Wahlberg? After Andre 5000, they get shot up in the house. This looks like that post-shooting. Look at this right here. These are fresh syringes. Oh, actually, look at this. Get a shot of all this. This whole thing. Look right here. We've got packs and packs of syringes here. Now, as you can see, this area of land would have been an extra probably 20 homes in Detroit, and they've either burned down or just been destroyed. And these huge barren sections of land, they're all over the place in Detroit, so what's actually started popping up are things called urban farms, where people actually build miniature farms right here in the city to grow food for themselves. And like I said, it's so desolate. There have actually been bear sightings in the city of Detroit, too. Just another problem that they don't need here in Detroit. You got the wild dogs, now you got the bears. Maybe you'll see a wild dog and bear fight, and we'll get this on Discovery. That's what I'm hoping for. That's my next career shift. Now you might be wondering why I've shown you this. Why is it necessary for you to see a once great city brought to its knees by government bureaucracies and powerful unions? And to you I would ask to look at the current administration, look at this administration's promises to the American people, and compare them to the promises of corrupt Detroit politicians over the last 50 years. They're nearly identical. Detroit has been the perfect laboratory for leftist policies at work for nearly half a century. It's the perfect vision of the left utopia that this administration sees. And when you continue to remove free market principles that have made this country great, and you continue to create a state-dependent society, this is very well what America could look like in a very short amount of time. And I think that's important.
If there's one way to describe the aura of Detroit, it would be that of hopelessness. The city's citizens have been robbed of the American dream by politicians and bureaucrats upstream. They've been promised the world, but have been left with this. So I ask you, is this the America you want?
Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children. That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
Good evening. Welcome to our unrehearsed, spontaneous, and informal program. As always, no teleprompters, no cue cards, no idiot boards, no reruns. Just plain ad-lib conversation in which we try and tell it like it really is.